three different streams going on. So you get a wide variety of fin crime professionals in different roles. So as a tech provider, that covers a big basis. And I think as a provider, you really understand the people that we want to have conversations with.
To Financial Crime and Compliance Unfiltered, the podcast where we bring you sharp conversations with the experts shaping the fight against financial crime. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Sabrina Chen, US Head of Financial Crime Analytics with AML RightSource and previously Global Head of AML Customer Risk, Data Science Senior Lead for Citibank. With over 17 years of experience in compliance and risk management, Sabrina is driving transformation in how global financial institutions approach customer risk, harness data science, and address emerging threats from crypto to human trafficking. We'll explore her insights into the future of AML and what it takes to operationalize client risk ratings and how new technologies are reshaping the way we combat financial crime. Stay tuned. So welcome Sabrina, and welcome back Una as well. This is obviously in the lead up to the New York event on the 13th of November, where we're also going to be all together on site, which will be fantastic again. So maybe just to kick off with, Sabrina, over to you. We'd love to obviously hear a little bit about your experience to date, I guess, and you've obviously had a recent move as well, and where your passion sits currently, sort of within the financial crime space, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe just give it more of a background. My whole career has been in financial crime space. By now, it's almost 18 years, and I started as a consultant in PricewaterhouseCoopers, KPMG, and then moved to Citi for 11 years and leading their AML global customer risk and data science team. So being there 11 years, went through two different consent orders from OCC as well as FRB. And because it's a global risk model, and it was also many encounters with the global regulators, which is also very fun encounters. And 2 weeks ago, I just moved to the AML RightSource. That is my newest employer. And the passion actually is also one of the reasons driving my move, which is I do see how technology is really enabling financial crime, making a huge difference, no matter it's on efficiency, innovation, accuracy, and the ultimate goal for all of our financial crime professionals are to help catching the bad guys faster, sooner, and more powerfully. So I do think with that regard, although the banking is definitely a place to provide those line of defense for our customers, but maybe if I'm in a position that can provide even broader help to this industry, and that I would be glad to, at all capacity, especially in those new products and AI and the crypto, and really can fastly promoting those helpful solutions for our clients, for FIs to together battle the financial crime. Yeah.
I have to say, I don't think you could have made a better move at this point in time. And, your background, obviously, you've been in consultancy for a number of years, then you've moved in-house and you've really understood the struggles of not just implementation, but living with the actual controls day to day and the effectiveness of those controls. And as you mentioned, going through some nice OCC consent orders, it's always enjoyable. But I think now, data analytics and tech is the future of the compliance space, and bringing your knowledge from both the consultancy side and on the in-house, over 11 years in-house into the tech side. It's a game changer. And I think, I know AML Right Source are really lucky to have you on board, because what you're going to bring to the team is a completely different lens. I'm a massive believer in, when you're trying to sell a product, you need to first speak the language of the client. And the brilliant thing is, you've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, so you're able to walk in and really understand what the client's specific challenge is, and then really help them to articulate and understand why the tool itself is going to help them with solving that problem statement as well.
Absolutely. I also think it's not just for where I worked for, because when I was in City, we did a lot industry benchmarking, roundtable, Wolfsburg, calibration. So that actually allows me to see many things that are definitely not unique to the bank I worked for. It could be although City back then was in a very different situation where there were tons of restructurings, a lot of turmoil, but also the fact that it has the broadest footprint allow me to have that exposure, knowing like maybe even it's one company, the financial crime solution can be very different, depends on the jurisdiction. So these are all valuable experience I'm hoping to bring for my clients going forward.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
And just touching on the new products we talked about, I think when we talked previously about crypto, stablecoin, the Genius Act, and so on. How will financial crime look different now with crypto being in the game, and how do you believe that we can be ready to face these new risks and threats in front of us, Sabrina?
I definitely think compared to other new products, crypto is a whole different area, and it's not just to treat that as a new product and adding the product risk to your portfolio. When you're building out your financial crime framework, it probably needs more fundamental. In some way, it depends on what your FI is focusing on, potentially even overhaul the framework to allow those very different nature products to have an efficient framework to operate. One of the distinct difference is the financial crime on crypto or blockchain is much, much, much faster, and it's always measured by seconds. And instead of, because right now the financial crime world, many turn around by filing SARS, by throwing investigations, taking the minimal days, if not month, or in occasional cases, years. But in the crypto world, that's absolutely not allowed, because before you even blink, it's already committed by those very savvy and complete, bad actors who have all that experience, and they never have silos. So that's another problem if I have to face, because from what I heard, that right now there's already a beacon network built up for the crypto world to allow public and the private sectors to work together to fight the criminals on actings on the crypto world, and that allows really quick alarming across the entire network about maybe a particular wallet address is not solid. So at least anyone receive that alarming in the network can immediately freeze or stop the transactions. That just can't imagine how that can happen in the actual banking world. So I do think to allow crypto become one of your products under the risk tolerance, the financial crime framework will be quite different compared to now, and then we need to act fast and at least ahead of the time you're really deeply involved in this area.
And what do you think, you hit the nail on the head there. I think the future of financial crime compliance is even in 5 years, it's going to look completely different than it does today, not just because of tech, but, in my opinion, we're going to have to see, I wouldn't say an amalgamation of, I don't like this whole kind of like FRAML, bringing fraud and AML. we need to break down the silos, because that's obviously what the financial, the illicit actors are actually benefiting from, is the fact that they understand the silos we have. And that is one of the benefits to them. They also have the technology and they also have the SME knowledge that we have. But I think with breaking down these silos amongst the risk functions and then bringing in the right tech so that we can really escalate, the real alerts to the right people with the right SME knowledge is going to be a game changer for all of us, not just in terms of cost effectiveness, but also in terms of detection. But the big obstacle that continues, in my opinion, is the lack of information sharing from the public sector.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was actually recently I joined the ACAMS assembly in Vegas, and I was a speaker there, but I also joined other sessions. There were a couple hosted by this year, by the way. The focus is so much on AI in the crypto world. So that's really just everyone's keen to see how financial crime can be ready at the same speed as those technology. But back to your question, it is that those are the technology advancement in the crypto world, and for bad actors to have better tools. It's just incredibly fast, and there's it's very few things we can do to. I actually asked the speaker, why do you think in the financial traditional TradFi, it's not happening yet, that kind of collaboration? Of course, we have 314B and those travel rules, and to allow some sort of collaboration. But I think being a highly regulated industry, banking does have more hesitation to share those information, customer information, especially for a Citibank, where we have such a broad footprint, where many of data privacy countries has extremely rigorous laws on that. So that becomes the risk we cannot compromise in order to bring that speed on. So a lot more to do, but hopefully I was really just thinking, to put it a very simple way, to have a similar network like Beacon Network across the traditional FIs. That would be amazing. Yeah.
I heard at the ACAMS conference, there was a member of the SEC that was there, was actually announced that they're going to do a complete overhaul of the AML regulation in the US. Absolutely. And it was music to my ears, because I think we've over-engineered within an inch of our life, and KYC at its base point is nonsense. We're asking somebody to tell us who they are, expecting them to be honest with us, but the only way we can actually find out who they are is how their account operates. But previously, with rules and scenario static based tools, they're 2% effective, 8% at best. So, this is going to be a game changer. And I'm really hoping in Europe, we're going to see AMLA following suit with a back to basics approach rather than over engineering. But I do think Europe is shooting itself in the foot with the overly onerous AI Act requirements that they're pushing through. And I think it's going to stifle innovation in Europe. I also think it's going to stifle, should I say stifle's not the right word, we're going to have inoperability across banks globally in terms of AI systems because of the super equivalent requirements and standards that are being implemented in Europe. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out longer term with global institutions, and how they can actually, we want to create one source of the truth in our data, but if our systems aren't compatible across jurisdictions, how does that impact a global standards model?
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Sabrina? Do you want to comment on that, or those?
The global standard, just on my personal view, not representing any of the employers.
Absolutely.
I always think KYC really should be something you're not asking our customer, although organically in the ideal world, it comes from customer. But like you said, how do you expect them to be not just being honest, but also like being always upfront? They may even not be aware of the changes that can potentially impact their risk level. So if the technology allows us to retrieve those information, and or the regulators allow us to, with the new overhaul of the standards and the regulations, allow us to, instead of check the box for KYC, but more of almost pushing the FIs to collect those actual information from transactions, from behaviors, from, or maybe onboarding. Of course, you collect something, but you have ways to kind of monitor along the way. That would have been not just increase the true positive hits in the screening or transaction down the road, but also significantly reduce the friction of customers' experience, that journey, end-to-end journey. Because right now, all the fintechs or the technologies are competing on clients with experience, and whoever has the mundane KYC process, or because the regulator requires you to check all those boxes to submit the beneficial owner to a database, it wouldn't be actually click well with many of the users, and no matter institutions or consumers. So we are very much looking forward to see that change from top down, from regulator. And I know they're keen to seek feedback from private sectors as well on what makes sense and what is realistic, because ultimately no one wants to just do the work for the sake of it. But I see that it's actually changing, and I do think the technology has played a big role here.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we move on to, we wanted to touch on, I think, I can't even say it, operationalizing, I can't even say it, risk.
You've got this, Jane. You've got it.
I definitely haven't, right. But in terms of defining the challenges, in terms of low, medium, high risk clients, what does success look like in practice, do you think, in that sense? So what are the biggest challenges in defining those different layers of clients?
In defining? I think in defining, I don't think, at least from some of the roundtable I joined, it does show a big variance across FIs in terms of how they want to define the risk. There are many different ways and the different risk appetites. But to come back to this original topic, the operational impact is huge. And there are sometimes, for example, I know some of the banks have this particular band called medium high. So that really gives them leeway to not have so many the quote unquote high risk customers, which are required for a lot more due diligence by many jurisdictions. So I actually thought that's pretty smart, that you still impose control, but on paper it's not really particular high risk customers. But I do think eventually to fundamentally shield customers, shield the bank, while at the same time not really burns through banks' bottom line, is to put that kind of dynamic risk rating process. I know very few banks already do that. It's not easy to implement, but if it's a dynamic risk rating that allows the risk to be not even real time, but frequent enough to reflect the true risk level, instead of enforcing reviews on a cadence of the schedules and even with nothing changes, or on a very low risk customers. I think that dynamic risk rating allow you to focus on what matters the most, where the risk is really focused on. So that relieves operational risk by not just doing the check the box. What I've observed that in the front line, the first line, who actually review the customer profiles, they tend to be very risk averse, because it's personal liability. Well, maybe not personal liability, like professional liability in line. If you miss something in doubt, put that at high risk. Something not sure, disposition as extremely severe, or need next level review. So that kind of shift that liability to the next level. You kind of need to align that risk appetite or the operational efficiency, and also the bank's risk appetite, to ensure that we are really having our resource on the right things. And the customer can change a lot as well by just follow that scheduled reviews, it actually potentially also miss a lot true positives for those who turn into abnormal or turn in. The KYC profile may never change, but it could the behavior, if you don't follow closely in comparison to the KYC profile, then you wouldn't capture those very nuanced changes. So that's why I think the dynamic risk rating ultimately can bring that. But it's challenging in a way that operation maybe not appreciate that at the beginning, although the intention is to relieve the risk, because by dynamic, that means it's less predictable. They cannot do the capacity planning ahead of time. Say, okay, this year I'll have how many reviews, or this month can have that charts of the capacity planning, because you don't know when the risk is going to change. But over the time, I do think that once the operating model works to be compatible with this, I would definitely foresee a significant saving, and you will realize all those FTE that are sitting around to do the routine reviews probably are not necessary, and that they're not, most importantly, they're not putting the head at as a risk manager. They're more putting the head as an operational, someone just to operational execute what is asked to do. And then now if it's a risk manager, they really look into things dynamically on whether that makes sense for this client.
But Sabrina, I would agree with you on the point that sometimes we don't know, we can't foresee where the risks are going to emerge from. But what I would disagree on, and this is something that I'm quite passionate about because I don't think we do it very well as an industry. First and foremost, MI, management information. We should be able to foresee our emerging risks. And that also includes FTE headcount for backlogs in screening alerts where we're seeing spikes, understanding, is it a calibration issue, or actually are we seeing, and if we are seeing an increased risk, we need to go right back to the very beginning, which is our risk assessment, and understand how that spike has been allowed to happen. Like, is it an inherent issue with our understanding of the product and service risk? Is it a distribution channel risk? Is it a supply chain risk? Is it a third party risk? Is it geographic, that we've incorrectly, calibrated geographic risk ratings because we weren't familiar with that country, so we've automatically put it in a higher status, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where I think we do this really badly as an industry. What we do is we very quickly throw FTEs at clearing backlogs. But for me, the first point of it is, well, look, if we saw a sudden spike that was out of the blue, how did we not identify this through our top and emerging risks to start with? If it was an unknown that just appeared from nowhere, going back, we first should go back to basics with our risk assessment. And the problem is many risk assessments aren't actually founded in the products and the services, distribution channels, etc. Their starting point is regulation, and then it's mapped across from that. So for us to get this right, and for us to have perpetual kind of KYC, behavioral analytics, understanding our customers' behaviors, we need to strategically rethink the foundation upon which we've built our frameworks. And that's where at the moment, I'm a massive advocate for, sometimes if there's too many cracks in a wall, it's not the wall, it's the problem, it's the foundation. And as Einstein said, to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result is insanity. And we've actually become an insane global group of compliance officers because we keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So I don't think we really understand very well distribution and supply chain risk exposure. And I've not actually seen any AML, enterprise-wide risk assessment that addresses this to the extent of detail that it should.
Absolutely. Actually, I know you mentioned that's what you disagree, but hearing what you said, I actually agree with all of them. Maybe we just kind of come out differently. In fact, when I was working in banking industry, I was actually exactly doing that. It's just that the people who are really frenetically throwing bodies into that review
Yeah.
are very different from the ones who are actually responsible for doing those new trend monitoring new typology research. I was sitting at the second line, so our team actually, although mostly focused on the risk scoring, but because we have the customer data, we did have the luxury to dig into those analyses, see why there's a spike, and then we actually help our first line partners to answer many questions and help them predict if this is already happening. And for that reason, most likely in the next few months or years, you will see the same trend. It could be because of new regulation locally for some of the countries. It could be because this geographic risk, there's a geopolitical landscape change, and this country became all of a sudden very high risk. Or it can be just because we also kind of observe some of the countries have a particular trend of forming funds, like startup funds, and those are actually driving up the risk because some of the risk factors we use in the models are really just designed for capturing those very new and funds that maybe with very complex vehicle structure. So all these are things at least when I was in the bank, I was very keen on. We actually do this monthly and share all the insights through visualization to our not clients, to our stakeholders on a monthly basis.
But our risk frameworks, Sabrina, are reactive. They're not proactive. And I think that's the game changer, potentially, I think 18, 24 months down the road, where the AI systems that we implement start to actually think for themselves. Everything that we have in our risk framework today is known knowns. Because we are reliant on the new typologies being identified before we're implementing those controls. And that for me is just, it's just nonsense, that the criminals know that we know this. So of course their typology and their structuring will change. And I was actually watching a Netflix series actually the other day. It's called Billionaire's Bunker, and they was just showing the setup of shell companies to move monies, and it was just once again just showing the fact that complex networks exist in our books, but to the human eye, they're impossible to detect. And if HSBC is a great example with Google AI, they identify complex networks in their books that they never knew existed before. Yeah. But that's the first stage. The second stage then is, well, what type of typologies are happening within these complex networks, which, as you know as well as I do, and Jane knows, Plan B will already be being executed because they will have killed Plan A in terms of moving the monies through that channel. And that's where this public-private partnership is just so essential. And there was also on another side of something that was quite disappointing the other day to see. I was watching a Panorama episode where they were talking about the illegal drug cartels that are coming up from LATAM into Europe, and how they were transporting with the cargo ships, etc. And what I got from the Panorama episode was that SARS are working. The information to the FIUs is working. That information is being sent to the right authorities, but the authorities don't have the manpower capabilities to intervene in every case. So they're having to let through certain shipments. And it kind of made me sad because I thought, we never get any positive feedback on SARS or STRs. But suddenly there it was in front of me that it's actually working. We're doing a good job. But those monies will continue to flow through our books, not because we didn't detect it or we escalated it. It's because the authorities don't have the manpower to intervene. And so there's a whole other side to this. It can't be on the banks to continually be implementing, I think Singapore last year spent around $7 billion on compliance controls alone across various industries and various sectors, from shipping, banking, etc. But, where does the buck stop? We've all of these controls and we've done our job. What do we do next? So I think there's a massive step back and discussion that needs to happen across the sectors and with public-private partnerships on what can we do better to front run this? We're never going to be one step ahead, but how can we better share information that our systems are proactively helping to kind of articulate what the possibility of the next type of financial crime typology will look like?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that ties back to my earlier point where like crypto or the Beacon network is exactly addressing that. The public sector is alarmed right away, and they're the one with the authority to take actions to stop the funds actually going. But I think in the traditional FI, this is just yet to happen. That cycle alone takes days, months, years, right?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Okay. Just leading on, maybe a couple of final questions, Sabrina, and obviously anything else you'd like to touch on as well that we haven't covered off. But your broad experience, your many years of experience, obviously within in the sector, and obviously your recent move as well. So congratulations as well for that. What advice would you give to newcomers from your professional coaching perspective? So if you were speaking to a rising professional within looking to enter the FinCrime analytics space today, what one piece of advice or what advice would you give them based on your experience that you've had?
I would think that it's the skill sets being very versatile, because the fact that we have very silos, although this is also structurally imposed from the top down, but if you're a very versatile professional in the FinCrime world and also have that curiosity and inquisitiveness to know everything, the entire cycle from KYC, TM, investigation, the technology piece, analytics, I do think the future of the TradFi rely on a lot those financial crime professionals who really are not just designed for a particular role, but really know things end to end, and can bring that really connected view about what is really risk, instead of say on this pillar it has risk, so let's do something on this pillar, and then you end up having so many resources on each of the pillars, but connectively one, you probably miss the true ones that in each pillar doesn't have risk and the horizontally does. And that's exactly what regulators are looking for, because when they are coming in to do the exams, they pick things horizontally, right? They pick a couple records and look at everything about those customers. And they realize right away there is no connectivity in terms of the control. For each pillar, you did a great job, but how about together? So coming back to your question, I do think those whole newcomers exhibit that, at least the willingness to really know everything, not just say how to do my job in the 9 to 5 and get out here. I do think will be the successful ones, and will be the ones we should really rely on in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, Una, did you want to comment on anything, or you?
No. I'm just ready for your favorite question, Jane.
Yeah. Well, I was asked, I kind of asked it, I suppose. Yeah, it's always like to ask the next generation, giving some input and advice based on your own career, Sabrina. But you probably touched on that a little bit, talking about the need for versatile skill sets and being curious. And the non-siloed approach. But
what do you think is, if I may ask, what do you think has been the biggest challenge for me personally? It's not even a challenge, but it excites me. It's the continuous learning that's required to do this role effectively, and to be constantly being able to adapt to change. But not everybody will naturally have those skill sets. So how have you approached that in your career, having to, across, a career of nearly 20 years, you've had to adapt and change to emerging typologies, regulatory focus. Let's talk about correspondent banking. Let's talk about private banking. Let's talk about corporation finance. Let's talk about money mules. Especially in organizations like Citi, you'll be seeing all of these products kind of across a spectrum of different types of clients. How do you keep yourself abreast of developments in the market and continually keep yourself up to date with emerging knowledge, regulations, etc.?
Yeah, it is truly an investment of time, and sometimes even a subscription costs money too. But I
Yeah.
have found, of course, it's almost like you're looking for a stock market news, that I do kind of really skim through the summary of news globally on in the financial crime world, see what are the new trends. There's little thing, those little habits or micro habits definitely build up, and I. Another part well, not the trick, but at least things I do is really go to conferences. Transform Finance is one of those. Actually, was the
Good
first one
name drop.
Yeah.
there we go.
It was it the first one you went to, you said, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the very first
Yes.
conference I went to and also speak at. So in those conferences, almost very convenient for you to know different perspectives from different sectors, all in that packed a few hours. So I did find that, and it depends on the conference. Sometimes it's short them rule. You really get to hear many insights that you don't know, or even share those like in-house within that realm, and actually get to know many very interesting, and at the minimum allow you to benchmark where your team, your organization
Yeah.
stand in this industry. I do think a lot inside, at least that for me, that kind of very open constant learning from those reputable resources and go to the reputable conferences, and was very helpful. But I think for those who may not be interested in conferences, there are also other avenues to be more less require that kind of time investment. You got to pick your own ways. And well, right now, the actually another very unique way, I also know a couple attorneys that's on the defense side for money launderer or fraudsters, and I like to sometimes chat with them to really see from their view, more focus on what they have found is actually very vulnerable for prosecutor to accuse, and actually are some of the things they can easily defend their client, or that gives you such a refreshing perspective, that because everyone's on this direction, okay, we need to do what we need to do, but on the other side, bad actors are also thinking, what can I not do? So the attorneys, they're just doing their job. They're very ethical professionals, and without compromising any confidentiality, they are happy to share those views about what they observe as very common areas that can be easily taken advantage.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, thank you very much. I think we're pretty much out of time, ladies. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Sabrina, for joining us today and taking the time out. And Una, we'll all get to meet in New York on the 13th of November, so not too far off.
I can't wait. I've actually never been to America before, and every time I'm supposed to go, something happened. So fingers crossed I make it this time.
Yeah, November
I hope you do.
The day.
I should start applying for my visa already, but with an Irish passport, I think I can walk on through.
Absolutely.
You'll be fine.
I'm jealous.
You'll be fine. Yeah. No, but an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, we really look forward to seeing you in person again in November, Sabrina. And hearing and obviously, make the most of the day with us all. Thanks, ladies.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye.